Okay, this video is about Soren Kierkegaard. He's academic hero number 19, psychology hero number 5. Soren Kierkegaard lived from 1813 to 1855. He's known as the Danish Socrates. He often wrote in pseudonyms so he could be more objective and outspoken. He was kind of funny about that. Oscar Wilde had said, give a man a mask and he'll tell you the truth. And beyond that, Soren Kierkegaard would write in a pseudonym, and then he would write reviews of his own work in another pseudonym, and he would make fun of himself and criticize himself. What I like best about him is he really goes into the deep aspect of how does one work through difficult thoughts. And he emphasizes, the Hegelian synthesis is just, thesis, antithesis, new synthesis. And what Kierkegaard says is in real life, you don't get to combine everything the way you wish you could. You have to make a lot of difficult choices. And how do you make those difficult choices? So he gets into the inner dialogue of the mind, and I think that's great. I just thought of him because the previous psychology hero, Carl Rogers, was heavily influenced by Kierkegaard, which made me think of him then. So they kind of go together. Whenever I have sort of a momentary emotional interest in something that I like, I'll often use that as a reason to make a video. Now's that moment. You got the energy to do it. And I think eventually that's kind of the goal of this YouTube channel, how I visualize it, to put high quality, good stuff, sort of for intelligent, high IQ people. I've given up on trying to appeal to the masses. I just don't have that appeal or that interest. But I think something really good could be made out of this site. And, of course, the nutrition, the health, the pathophysiology, but I actually believe this stuff really helps a lot with intellectual development, and that in the long run, for somebody, let's say a younger person, they want to become the best possible thinker and student they could be, you need all this stuff. It shapes, how you look at things. Okay, so continuing with Soren Kierkegaard quotes. You don't just think your way through a philosophic problem. You feel your way through it. How does one choose between Athens, science, and Jerusalem, religion and faith? Soren Kierkegaard. Michael Sugrue, the philosophy professor who was a recent philosophy hero in these series of lectures, he described Kierkegaard as a theological romanticist, the best theologian since Pascal, a serious jester. So he's serious, but he's telling jokes, and that's partly why he's entertaining to read. He does remind us of Blaise Pascal. And here's a typical Soren Kierkegaard quote. I am a missionary. I bring Christianity to Christendom. Okay. Now here's a sort of a deep dive into how does Soren Kierkegaard think and work his way through difficult personal problems and philosophical problems. Self-creation is the ultimate task of man. The possibility means that I can. It is convenient to say that possibility turns into actuality, but it's not so easy. There's an intermediate step called anxiety. Anxiety arises from the awareness of having a variety of options and not being sure which is best. If man were a beast or an angel, he would not be able to be in anxiety. Since he is both beast and angel, he can be in anxiety. And the greater the anxiety, the greater the man. If we move forward, we have anxiety. If we do not move forward, we suffer the depression, the pressing down of the soul's purpose. In such a difficult choice, one must choose anxiety. For anxiety is at least the path of personal growth. Depression is a stagnation and a defeat of life. Too much conformity drains away life. Individuality is like riding a wild stallion. Conformity is like falling asleep on a hay wagon. To be able to despair is an advantage, for it implies that one has a self. The key factor is whether one is conscious of their despair. The more consciousness, the more intense the despair. But the more consciousness, the closer one is to eradicating the despair and to living a genuine life appropriate for a human being, Soren Kierkegaard. And take a look how this contrasts with all this psychiatry stuff. So psychiatry says, oh, you're anxious, you need to take a pill. But that's like the approach of an idiot or a loser, because that same anxiety quite often is helping you to figure out what to do with your life. And even a mild depression, don't get me wrong, there can be severe anxiety that is pathological. There can be severe depression that is pathological. But there's much, much more mild to moderate anxiety, mild to moderate depression that, is, maybe your brain, your unconscious mind, trying to guide you, trying to help you to say, look, you're going down the wrong path. You need to reanalyze this and figure out that there's a better way. And it can energize you. And that's partly why in previous lectures I spoke about the Kazimir Dobronsky theory of personality disintegration and reintegration. Because that reshaping of your worldview, your personal mission in life or destiny in life, helps you to maximize your achievement. And, a lot of great achievers, they're real sort of tightly strung violins of how they are going to approach their life in this world. Okay, so Kierkegaard continues. Christendom has done away with Christianity without being quite aware of it. That's a common thing that geniuses and great thinkers, they sort of view their own age as being sort of wimpified, if you will. Kierkegaard continues. The biggest danger, that of losing oneself, can pass off in the world quietly, as if it were nothing. Every other loss, an arm, a leg, $5, a wife, and so on, is bound to be noticed. Kierkegaard continues, a man who cannot persuade men cannot save them either. That's the vegan man's burden, Can know all this stuff, but, patient doesn't want to hear it, can't help him, and most don't. Okay, so it's easy to take his thinking into nutrition coaching. All right, Kierkegaard continues. What I really must get clear is what I am to do. Not what I must know, except insofar as knowledge must precede every act. What matters is to find a purpose, to see what it really is that God wills that I shall do. The crucial thing is to find a truth that is true for me, to find the idea for which I am willing to live and to die. That is what my soul thirsts for, as the desert thirsts for the water. Soren Kierkegaard. So yeah, that's pretty heavy internal mind dialogue. This guy, Soren Kierkegaard, he was brilliant. He really was. And now here's his quote about the future of the world. And again, remember that Sugrue called him a serious jester. Now listen to this. It happened that a fire broke out backstage in a theater. The clown came out to inform the public. The public thought it was a jest, and they applauded. He repeated his warning, and they laughed even louder. So I think the world will come to an end, amid general applause, from all the wits who believe that it is a joke. Soren Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard continues. If we move forward, we have anxiety. If we choose a banal, empty path, we stagnate and become depressed. Too much conformity drains away life. Despair is not just a lack of hope. Despair is a failure of development of the self. Soren Kierkegaard. Now that's a great quote. You don't just feel sad because you're sad about the future or sad about something. You feel sad if you're stagnating. You feel sad if you're trapped in a rut. You feel sad if you have to do monotonous, stupid stuff as the only way you can make money. And so you want to try to see, is it possible I can make better use of my time to do something better, to get the most out of my time, to get the most out of my time on this world or on this time in my day. And Soren Kierkegaard, like Socrates, gets you to look at yourself and your life and try to think about how to make it better. Okay, Kierkegaard continues. The truly blessed man is not blessed by faith alone or by works alone, but by both. An age without passion lacks values. And that's also true, like if a person's only a consumer, or just sees life as only, make money and then have fun with what you can buy, then their life ends up being pretty empty. Okay, and then I just love this quote again. Here it is in isolation. Individuality is like riding a wild stallion. Conformity is like falling asleep on a hay wagon. Kierkegaard continues, how do we find a way out of our mundane lives? Every human has a natural need to formulate a life view, a conception of the meaning of life and its purpose. Soren Kierkegaard. And later on, Ayn Rand, had good quotes sort of similar to that you have to choose a personal philosophy, because if you don't, it will be imposed upon you externally, and you'll just be, accepting it like the typical, stupid person. So you want to develop your worldview so you can get the most out of your life. Kierkegaard continues, life can only be understood backwards, but it must be lived forwards. The most common form of despair is not being who you are. Kierkegaard continues, most men are subjective towards themselves and objective towards all others, frightfully objective sometimes, but the task is precisely to be objective towards oneself and subjective towards all others. So yeah, this is great quotes. I love all this stuff. And by the way, if you want to get good with this stuff, use lots of quote sites on the internet. I recommend you keep your own record of quotes. And especially, you build these up over the course of time, and they help you for a lot of things, for situations you get into in your life, for becoming a better writer, a better speaker. You're kind of getting the best nuggets from the best minds that ever lived, so it only makes you more articulate and a better thinker. All right, Kierkegaard continues. The person who is right often has to stand alone. That's a scary part of being smart, is you're going to not be in the regular bell curve. You're going to be outside of it very often. And to be outside of it, you often catch a lot of wrath from people who insist that you stay inside of it. But to stay inside of it, you'll often be conformist and below what you're capable of. So that's sort of that's been called the curse of the high IQ. Kierkegaard continues, while objective truths are known and can be verified by a consensus, subjective truths are lived and experienced and can be true for us based on our experience. Subjective truths are more important. Artists go forward by going backward. To help another effectively, I must understand what he understands. If I do not know that, my greater understanding will be of no help to him. Instruction begins when you put yourself in his place, the patient's place, so that you may understand what he understands in the way that he understands it. Yeah, that's basically, like others have said, you have to understand people from their own point of view to really understand them. Okay, here's the last slide on Kierkegaard. Let us imagine a sailor and assume that he passed every examination with distinction, but he has not yet been out to sea. Imagine him in a storm. He knows everything he ought to do, but he has not known before how fear grips the seafarer when the stars are lost in the blackness of night. He has not known the sense of impotence that comes when he sees the wheel in his hand become a plaything of the waves. He has not known how the blood rushes to his head when one tries to make calculations at such a moment. In short, he has no conception of the change that takes place in the knower when he has to apply his knowledge. Soren Kierkegaard. He continues, far from idleness being the root of all evil, it is rather the only true good. And I agree with that. You want to be a thinker, you want to do some creative work, you need time to be alone and just think. And so you want to create and free up that time. And that's actually one of the things that, you work out with the other people in your life, your family and friends. And sometimes that's a good thing in a marriage, if one person frees up the other one to do stuff, simply by having different interests. Well, anyways, Soren Kierkegaard, great for deep analytical thinking. Hope it's helpful.